Hello again. As you heard from the previous panel, my name is Liv, and I'm really glad to be able to facilitate this conversation today about diversity and intersectionality. I will just begin by telling you a little bit about the three people that we're going to be hearing from today, and then I will let them continue the introductions themselves before I ask a few questions. So yeah, you're welcome to sit here. Andre Forsythe founded the nonprofit Canadian Climate Challenge to raise awareness of the incredible climate work and solutions being implemented in the GTA every day. As a person of color, he was particularly frustrated by the inequities in access to climate action and climate solutions awareness. Through CCC, he aggregated and began streaming climate events taking place in the GTA in hopes of helping to democratize access and to demonstrate that the structural change and paradigm shift in our cultural narrative was already underway. In 2019, Andre launched the School for Climate to empower artists to convey what a vision rooted in climate justice looks like, what different cultural stories feel like, and the role each community and industry can play in bringing that reality to fruition. Very glad you're here today for this music community. The School for Climate develops creative experiences from artwork to immersive environments to express the intersectional, inspirational power of climate solutions. Amazing. Hand for Andre. Veronica, very next. Veronica Johnny is a Cree Métis multidisciplinary two-spirit artist from Tabaka-Denede, Fort Smith, Northwest Territories. Ms. Johnny is a member of the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation and presently lives in North Ontario. You heard a little bit about her earlier when she spoke. It was amazing. She's a performer, visual artist, writer, musician, producer, manager, and lead singer of hard rock band Johnny's, a solo singer-songwriter and Indigenous hand drummer who shares teachings, hosts drum circles, and sings for water and all life everywhere. Veronica facilitates workshops through her business Indigenous, including themes of visual art, music, self-empowerment, and wellness through an Indigenous lens. And Veronica's spoken on some Music Declares events before, and it's been so amazing. Very grateful for her presence today. Shumaila Hemani is an interdisciplinary artist and academic residing in Alberta, Canada. She holds a PhD in music and MA in ethnomusicology from the University of Alberta and served as a music faculty for Semester at Sea 2020, very cool, and the Faculty of Extension at U of A. Her artistic practice involves sculpting with sounds of the environment and Islamic mystic poetry from South Asia for social empowerment and change. Her acousmatic composition, Perils of Heavy Rainfall, won the second prize in the Listening During COVID contest in 2020, and the New Forum magazine nominated her poem, Living with Purpose, for the Alberta Magazine Awards in Poetry in 2022. Amazing. She's currently writing her monograph for Rutledge's Islam and Human Rights series as an artist resident at Trico Changemakers Studio, Mount Royal University in Calgary. So one of the pillars at Music Declares Emergency in Canada is to make sure that we're centering the voices of Indigenous people, Black people, and people of color. And so in that spirit, I don't really want to talk much more myself during this panel. I would just love to hear from you three here today. And I'd love to start by just asking for you to answer the question about why we need to consider an intersectional lens when looking at the climate emergency within the music industry. Does one of the three of you want to start that off? Sure, okay. And it can be as casual as you like. We can pass the mic back and forth as you wish.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, why we need to consider the intersectional lens when looking at the climate emergency.
Okay. I thought you said music industry. Good afternoon, everyone. and thank you for having me. That's an excellent question. I think most of the people in this room probably already know the answer to this question. I wish we could broadcast this out to a wider audience. Intersectionality is important for sure, obviously, and I think we just assume that everyone gets that, but everyone has their own story or their own way that they define themselves, their own identities, and you can't just assume that everybody knows them. And so I think this is obviously a mistake that the environmental space has made. I think we're all quite aware of that. And I can tell you from my perspective, I remember growing up and hearing about the environment and a little bit about climate change. Captain Planet was definitely the best show on TV. But I wasn't moved that much. For me, I always felt other from that. It didn't feel like my space. When the moment for me when it did feel like my space was when I started to learn about, well, a lot more about what are the repercussions. It's not just nature. When I actually started to realize the social unrest, the climate migration, all of the issues that I had feared my entire life, but those issues were always othered, because in Canada we didn't have to deal with that. In our social circles, we didn't have to deal with that, and so it was always someone else's problem. And so for me, this work, and finally realizing, hold on, this is how I identify with this space. This is a space for me. And I know a lot of people who still feel that today, who still feel like the prevalent, dominant narrative is, oh, you work in climate, you must love nature. And I know it sounds silly, but I'm a pretty resilient person, and for me, I did not feel welcome until that very moment. And then I felt compelled. I felt seen. And even more than that, it felt like it was the first time that I could ever picture all of us coming together, all of us identifying with a common purpose, putting everything aside, and finding our collective humanity. Because if we didn't, it's game over. So I think the difference there, when you realize, okay, I am seen, I can identify with this dominant narrative. Once you understand and see and this happened for me long before the narrative obviously changed, because that was very recent that climate justice became a thing, and we understood this much more. But I was lucky that I got that experience at a young age. Most people I know don't have that, and they feel othered, and they don't feel like it's their space. I'll just, before I take over the entire rest of the day, I'll make one more comment, because it's related to music. There's a musician who performed at the climate strike just the other day, a very good friend of mine. Gay, Jamaican, Canadian, well, Jamaican, and he lives here as well. And he put out the first gay reggae music video and song depicting two men together. Brave. Like, very brave, in a genre that has been banned worldwide for their treatment of homosexuals. And when I said to him, I'm like, we really love your music, we would love for you to perform at the climate strike, he didn't feel like there was a place for him. And Ali and I spoke to him, and long story short, he came up to us afterwards and was so empowered by his experience. So the difference of taking an intersectional approach and not taking one is, for me, is the difference between success and failure.
Thank you so much, Andre. That was really moving, and it's so important to bring in those specific personal examples when we're talking about the work, right? So I think intersectionality is so important in the climate work and in the music industry because it brings in different perspectives. I can recall speaking to a friend in the arts industry, and he was like, yeah, we're doing all this work to save the earth and all this kind of stuff. And I want to reiterate what Dr. Suzuki said, which is something that I say all the time and teach people about, is we're not saving the earth. She's going to be around for a long time. We're saving ourselves, and we have to really look at that. In my rock band, the Johnnies, we have a song called Rock. It's in honor of Mother Earth as a rock in this solar system. And we combine rock and roll, electric ideas and stuff like that. We combined powerful women, ideas of powerful women, and rock and roll, and the earth to create this song called Rock, my husband and I. And in the lyrics it says, rock for 100 million years. And later, after the solo, we say rock for 100 million more. Whether or not we are around to see those next 100 million years is up to us. So my friend was like, oh my God, you just blew my mind. I'm coming at from this egocentric idea of I'm gonna save the earth. That's like saying one of the things that lives on my body is going to save me. It's like all these little beings that I'm a host to is going to save me. Humans, it's such an ego thing, right? And it comes from what I can't remember what that word was that they kept saying, but where humans are at the top, right? And so intersectionality is so important as a two-spirit identifying woman. That the more I learn about the things that we're not allowed to be taught as Indigenous people, there was a place for me in our society that was valued, and we're talking a lot about value today. And so as an Indigenous person, I want to ask everyone that is listening to, number one, start listening with your heart. Turn this off and turn this up, number one. I want you to start valuing voices that are not like yours. I want you to listen to the wisdom of the young people. And I'm a Indigened, my business Indigened is a partner of the Toronto District School Board, and I'm in schools constantly teaching teachers about how to listen to kids. And there's so many teachers that right now, if we all started like a land-based educational system, I don't think there would be one teacher left working for the TDSB. They'd all be like, I want to come work for you. And so we need to start creating these spaces, making them safer, and valuing the voices that we need to hear, like Andre was just giving an example of. We need to value them and lift them up, amplify. And so as an Indigenous woman, I want to ask you to please, whatever your organization you have, if you do not have an Indigenous advisor on your board, that's got to change today. So that's my call to action to you. And not just one Indigenous advisor, many Indigenous advisors, and value their time. Value what they say, and put them first. And that includes young people and the diverse communities, and that's where I'll leave that.
Thank you, Veronica. That was really powerful. I would like to add to this amazing discussion we're having about intersectionality. I approach it more from the perspective of Global South and my recent research creation, which was my album that recently got out called Mannat, that focused on climate crisis in Pakistan. And many of you might be aware that Pakistan experienced one of the most epochal flooding this year that displaced 33 million people, out of which 16 million are children. So while working on this research creation, I think one of the things that came forward is how climate crisis, in the way that it impacts people, it's not equal. Women and girls are more vulnerable to these the displacement that happens. And the example was, as the refugees waited for the aid to arrive and they are living in open spaces, children are more vulnerable to being trafficked. There are cries of mothers whose girls have gone missing because they do not have, let's say, a tent or any private space where they can protect their children. So that is a very important reason why intersectionality is important as a lens to look at climate justice, because climate crisis does not impact all of us in the same way. In terms of my work at the Mount Royal University, which has just recently started, and we're working with a community organization in Alberta that helps people with alleviating energy poverty, which is the energy bills that people go into poverty because of not knowing ways to conserve energy. And talking to the community leaders, I found out that there are diverse communities of newcomers that are not aware of a lot of aspects of energy conservation, and they go into poverty because of the high energy bills that they have to pay. So the lens of intersectionality here becomes really significant, because then we start looking at how diverse groups of people are being impacted by climate challenges around the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, especially the water. As a member of the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, where in northern Alberta, northern Saskatchewan, southern Northwest Territories is being directly affected by the tar sands and the tailings ponds, which are now which are leaching into the water. And speaking about the people most affected by climate change, I was considering it earlier, and in my community of Fort Smith, more people died this year in the last 4 months than the previous year from cancer, including my sister. My uncle and my auntie, who live in northern Alberta, their house was burned during a forest fire. There's 3-story house, all the outbuildings gone, and it was replaced by one little tiny trailer. That's how the government corrected this, with just this little tiny trailer, So there's lots of people who suffer. I can no longer live in my home community because I get too sick. My husband has told me that every time I go home, it takes me about twice as long to just recover back to my normal. So there's definitely lots of stuff going on that people need to remember. And my family still lives there. My daughter just came back from there. And so these things are directly affecting our well-being. And so one more thing I want to add before I pass it on is that I want to quote Lee Miracle. And she said, there's a direct correlation between the way we treat our women and our girls and how we treat the earth. And I really want you to take that in as one of the ways that we go forward, is again lifting female voices, lifting voices of girls, women, non-gender, two-spirit, trans people, because those are the voices that have not been heard. And again, reiterating to hear the voices of the youth. So if you have a little kid who's under 2 years old, take in everything they say, because they know. That's how I was taught. My nickname at home is Beanie, because my brother, who couldn't learn to say baby, kept saying Beanie, and that's my name at home, is Beanie. Because my older brother, who is under 2, that's how seriously we take it. That's my name, Beanie. So listen to those kids. Listen to your kids.
Oh, this is also very inspiring to me, and I'm sure everybody in this room. I've been making notes about things that I want to think more about after this. And something that I would love for each of you to perhaps touch on a little bit more is about your experience with making the unseen, let's say, seen in this part of the world. For example, Veronica, you were talking about having to leave home in order to protect it, and that's a big task that you're describing as really hard on you. And Shumaila, you were talking about how, it's not everybody in this part of the world that knows what's going on in the South. And in your experiences, what have been the most impactful ways of sharing this information in a way that really comes through to the people here? So it doesn't matter who goes first, I'll just pass to whoever wants to speak.
Thanks for that question. I find that with my own artistic practice in doing soundscape compositions that combine Sufi poetry from South Asia is an important way that I try to bring forward things that are not explicit when we are thinking about or when we are hearing about climate disasters across the world, because what we are absorbing are the big headlines and big news. And depending on our own, interests and priorities, there's only the surface that we absorb through the news. But I find that art and music has a very powerful role to play here, because it brings forward the human condition, the aspects about the climate crisis, which are not that explicit in hearing reports and absorbing information only, or fact absorbing. It doesn't get through to you in the way that music does, for example. So I'll talk a little about my charismatic composition called The Great Calamity and Displacement, which are focused on the present climate crisis in Pakistan. And what I tried to do in Displacement was take reports, the news reports, and the issues that are happening, the waterborne diseases, the cries of the woman whose girl went missing, a speech of the UN secretary talking about the scale of the disaster that's there. I took snippets of those and I interweaved it into a soundscape piece, which I think would be part of the ROM exhibit next week. Within The Great Calamity, I try to bring forward the perspective of a girl who is moving through the waters, walking through the waters, because her house and everything is lost, and she's moving, walking through the waters with her family in order to go to, a place where a more sheltered place or land. And the kind of things that could happen while you're just walking through flood waters. People drown, some people don't make it, and thousands of people, like 1,700 people have died as a result. It just brings me to one of the early childhood experiences I had with rainwater. Monsoon is, something that is very joyful and something that's really celebrated in South Asia because it comes after very hot weather. But I remember as a kid, I was 4 years old, And we were playing in the water. We used to swim in the water in the alleys. You know, that's what we used to do, and I used to be part of that. But at that time, there were also, you know, because the water used to stay on the streets. Sometimes people or municipality would open the gutters, like they would open the lids so that the water could go in. And I fell into one of those. And children die in that sense, and I could have died. I really could have died that day because there was nobody on the street. Everybody had, my brother had gone back, gone inside the house, and there was nobody. And I couldn't have screamed. I was just at the edge, and I could have fallen into it. But I think it is it's a stroke of luck that my brother came out to look for me, and I reached out for help, and I was, you know, we were together able to get me out. But I hear about children dying in that sense all the time, you know. So Great Calamity was really about walking through the flood waters and what could happen, and a girl's, you know, the kind of uncertainty that lies ahead for her. What's going to happen? What will my future look like? Will there be any sense of normality after this? What would it be like? And I know that children are confronting a lot of trauma as a result of, and you know, when we're thinking about all these epochal flooding, we're thinking about, oh wow, like, you know, climate disaster. We're looking at the big things, we're looking at the earth, but we also need to look at, you know, the people and both the micro level needs and the macro level impact it is having on us and our, it's just, I can't even think about what trauma that these families who are going through this crisis right now are undergoing. So I don't know if I was able to bring forward, but I find that art has a great power to bring visibility to these issues that otherwise would just become headlines and facts for us, and we would absorb them in a very effective way, not being able to understand the human condition. You know, art brings forward the human condition. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's, it's a direct example of why we need to diversify our voices. Everything you just said, it was the exact example what we're talking about. I learned so much just by everything that you just said, and I'm moved, and I want to help, you know, and I want to learn more, and this is exactly why we need this. It's exactly why we need to have intersectionality, and to create those connections with each other, and those heart-to-heart connections where I feel you, I feel what's going on within you right now, and now I know why you shake. I do. Because we were working on that right beforehand. We were both a little bit nervous, and I understand, like, you know, my nostrils flare when I hear these things, right? Where it's like I want to get angry, but anger doesn't really serve us. And I feel guilty, but guilt doesn't serve us. So we have to reach people in a way that they will feel it and they will hear us. And there's no better way than art and music. And we do have a responsibility as artists, as musicians, to use that platform in that way. And I really want to applaud young Bridget. I think she's not here anymore, but she really downplayed her involvement in all of this and how long she's been working as a young person on climate change. And she was the only young person here. And I just want to point that out too, that we need more young voices in these spaces, so they can tell their stories and we will really hear it. When a child speaks their truth, man, that's powerful, totally powerful. And now I've forgotten the question, so I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. What was the question?
Okay, I was hoping to hear a little bit more about your experience with making the unseen.
Oh, the unseen feels seen, absolutely. Well, lots of people of color have felt unseen for a long time. It's not an unusual feeling, myself included, even though I'm light-skinned, growing up in Alberta and Northwest Territories. Definitely felt othered, definitely was in another space. I actually learned how to be a chameleon and change myself so I would fit within spaces. And I don't do that anymore now in my 50s. I'm kind of like what he said. He was just like, I'm an elder now, I'm older and I don't care, you know, and I'm really embracing that in my 50s now. I'm just gonna really be me, and I'm not gonna change who I am to appease others anymore. And I'm working on that really hard. But to make the unseen seen, music and art is medicine, so let's use that medicine in the best way we know how.
Yeah, so that's a great question that we challenge ourselves with all the time. We completely believe that music and art are uniquely positioned to fulfill that task. I would say, so are we, can I speak to like a project that we did? Or is that too like basic an answer? Oh, okay. So one of the most recent times that this happened was during the provincial election. A bunch of climate youth were pretty pissed that prior to COVID in 2019, like every politician running was banging down their doors to get their endorsements, their support, etc. During the provincial election, zero engagement at all whatsoever. So they, like, after all that hard work they did leading up to COVID, nonstop, and finally feeling like, okay, wait, maybe we will have a voice. Maybe we will be seen. This is progress. And then literally, it's a couple of days or weeks before the election, and everyone is livid. So we tried to take that and give it a positive spin. So we turned to art. We upcycled some like closet doors that we had laying around, and what we tasked a bunch of youth artists to do was, on one side, depict kind of where you feel like we're going now, and on the other side, depict where we could be going, which was also in line with the OCEC principles, is everyone Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign, which even the process in itself was cathartic, like even just that. And I think that's also something that I know Judy and I have spoken about as well. It's not just the output of the creative work, whether it's a play or a visual arts, it's also the actual process of doing it. It's often you're not doing it alone. A lot of time there's some sort of input or et cetera. So we were all together, community at CSI, 9 artists who came, and we spent the day. We had a musician come who just released a little EP all about climate and how that's making her feel. And there were just no non-youth allowed, so it was a very protected space. And so at the end of the process, we ended up actually, I think it was like the day before the election, CBC, we ended up getting coverage on CBC at Queen's Park, and at least, I mean, it was small. I don't know how impactful it was, well, clearly not very impactful for the outcome of the election, but they felt that power coming back. And that, I cannot say how proud I was of myself, which is rare. But when they told me how empowered they felt because of that, like, there was nothing more I could have gotten out of that. And I would say, like, when it comes to elections, as we saw, was it 40% that came out last time? If we let people not be seen, man, the apathy will kill us in itself, and it's just so unproductive. Like if you have all these people who are not feeling part of the drive that we're making, of the community that we're all working so hard to build, it actually makes our work harder. And so, yeah, I mean, so we try and achieve that goal, which we don't always do, but that's another thing that I love about the arts is even in the process of the trying is also what matters. It's not always the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I really love what you said about what kind of things go into making it feel like a safe space and the outcome that has for those people and then the ripple from there. I'm going to quickly check the time. Great. I would love to just ask Veronica if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about IndigenEd. I didn't give you a full chance to speak to it, and I feel like there's a lot we could learn from the work that you're doing through that organization. Sweet. And then we're going to have a couple questions.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be able to speak, and I just want to say I'm only speaking on my own behalf. There's so many voices that we need to hear, and before I talk about IndigenEd, I really want to talk, or I guess I can talk about IndigenEd in this context too, but so IndigenEd is my sole proprietor business. It takes the word Indigenous and education together, and so it's about lifting Indigenous voices, particularly women's voices, and I've done a lot of work in my home community with my mother, who runs the Friendship Center there, and through IndigenEd, and I've seen thousands and thousands of young people in the Toronto District School Board and across Canada, helping them feel creating safe space. I like how you said protected space. That, I'm taking that with me. That was really powerful for me. You said protected space. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Because safe space sounds good, but protected space, man, that's powerful. And so creating these safe spaces where people can do their own healing work. And so that's what we do with IndigenEd. And we had a project recently that involved one of my good friends, Lucy Tulagarjuk, who, if you've ever seen the movie Fast Runner, she's one of the actors in there, and she's become a producer. She's running a television station called NITV. I just wrote a letter to CRTC on her behalf because the Inuit voice is the one that, like, I haven't seen any Inuit people. Is there any Inuit people here? Any Inuit people? No? Okay. So that's a voice we're not including here, right? Lucy's looking for people to write support letters on her behalf so that the CRTC will approve her application for NITV. And so that's another challenge I want to give you all, is to look up NITV, Lucy Tulagarjuk, tell the CRTC we need to hear the Indigenous, is particularly Inuit and Innu and people of the northern circumference, because guess what? It's my belief that that's where we're all going to be living as all this stuff happens, okay? But also, it's been a voice that has been discluded for far too long, and the knowledge base, the more north you go, the knowledge base regarding the earth, in my opinion, is much deeper. So we need to be including people like Lucy in this conversation. So I want you to invite her and value her voice and value the NITV voice. What else? What else can I say about IndigenEd? I don't know. Everything you see that I've done, most of it I did on my own with very little funding. People can't believe all the different roles that I've played, and I do them all really poorly. Mediocre, one might say, but may do all of these different things. And so I think what I would like, if I could see it, is way more support and amplification of Indigenous voices, of people of color voices, youth voices. And particularly, I believe that the answer to what's going on here with climate change lies within Indigenous languages. And so we need all to learn Indigenous languages because it's embedded, and that's why they took it away from us. Both my mother and father were born speaking their own language, and both of them no longer speak their own language. And I was not allowed to speak either of their languages. Why is that? What's up with that? Because, and I really want you all to learn Cree or Anishinaabe or Denisovan, you know. But before you can learn it, I would like to ask you to support us in learning it first. It's important for us to get it back first, for us to learn it, for us to relearn it, for us to start embodying it every day in every breath. And then we can teach you. So any language revitalization project you come upon, I want you to amplify that, support that, lift it, and do whatever you can for that, because it's in those languages that there's the answer to everything. All of our questions, they lie within those Indigenous languages. It's my complete belief system, and I'll explain that. I'll give you an example where my spirit name Meadow Valley Woman never really resonated with me. I always wanted, like, you know, running buffalo or something like that, or something, you know, flying eagle woman, right? And Meadow Valley Woman only made sense to me once I translated it into my mother's language. And then it's like, of course I'm Meadow Valley Woman. Meadow, meadow in the language is where the medicine grows. It smells so beautiful, and there's not just one medicine, there's many, many, many medicines. And valley is described as a hollowed out part of the earth. And as a hand drummer, none of this comes from me. I am a conduit. I'm to think of myself as a hollow bone, so that what's coming out is coming, and it just comes through my mouth. It's like I'm like a speaker, like I'm a woofer, right? Right? We can figure that out, right? And so, Meadow Valley Woman, oh man, I love that name now. And I wish I could tell it to you in my language, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to get it wrong. And I just appreciate each one of you being here. I appreciate everyone at home who's listening, who's on this podcast. And I just appreciate all the sponsors, all the volunteers, all the youth, the board, everyone that's been involved in this, all of you that are attending, everyone that's listening right now. I just want to express my extreme gratitude to you and say, hi, kinanas kamten suwao, I'm ninanas kamten suwao. I am grateful to you all from my heart. Hi.
Thank you so much. We might have time for a couple questions if anyone has something that they would like to ask the speakers here. Maybe we're good. Maybe we'll take a little extra break. Is there anything more that any of you wanted to share while you are on stage? Okay.
So are either of you performing tonight? No?
I'm hanging out with Grandma tonight.
Yes, that's right. Grandma's birthday. Tonight, I don't know if you guys know, right here, right? Later on tonight is going to be a performance, and I'm going to be singing Butterfly, which is about transmutation and transformation, which is what we all have to embrace, you know, step outside that comfort zone. Let's get our hands dirty. Let's get it in the dirt, as we say. And then the other song is called Frog in a Pot, which is basically a commentary on where we are right now within, and we're the frogs. So again, it's about, for me, it's like we have to save ourselves. And in doing so, by listening to the earth, by putting our ear on the ground and listening to her, that's one of the lines in one of the songs, and by opening our hearts and by creating those connections and the empathy and the understanding with each other, that we can go forward together. Lastly, I just want to say something that I hope that will really reach you, every individual here, where the sign of infinity, I talk about this lots in school, is the sign of infinity. And I want everybody to make this sign right now in front of them, the sign of infinity. It means no beginning, no ending, everlasting infinity, right? Now I want you to make it out from yourself and to everyone else. So this is our connection that we have to each other, this connection, right? And now make it to the earth and come back, making it to the earth, right? Okay, now you can stop doing that. Now I want you to pat your head. I'm kidding. Before this medicine was harvested, I'm trying to add more comedy. Before this medicine was harvested, something was offered. We don't just go and take from the earth. In my culture, as I knew this as a child, my grandmother and my mother taught me this. We don't just go take. It's not theirs just for you to take, despite what we've been taught or others have done. Before this medicine was harvested, we took tobacco and we put our gratitude in it. We put our love. We put our prayers in that tobacco, and we offered it at the base of this plant. And we knelt to show our humility. We knelt on our knees, and we communicated with this plant, and we said, we gave it that tobacco, and we offered something, and we asked, can we have some of your medicine? May we pick some of your medicine to use for ourselves? And we wait for an answer. And I love the sound of the sweetgrass, what it sounds. I'm just kidding, I don't hear sounds. But we wait, and when it's right, we go, okay, yes, now we can take some. We only take what we need, because again, we have to make sure there's some for the other people who are gonna come. You know, sweetgrass grows in all over, but you know, you have to make sure there's some for everybody else, right? And we did that through COVID. We never just cleared shelves, right? A lot of us. We made sure there was some left for other people, right? And so this symbol is a symbol of reciprocity. So are you going to give before you ask? Are you going to offer before you take? And this is a life philosophy. And so colonialism in one word, I say this all the time, is taker. Don't be a taker anymore. Give, offer, ask, and wait. And as Mr. Suzuki, Dr. Suzuki said, you know, oh, now I forget what he said. Okay, I blame the menopause. Yeah, just, you know, make that offering. Don't just be, you know, take. And as things become more scarce, we're going to have to learn how to share. So share what you have, especially if you have privilege, share what you have. Because, and I've said this for years, they're coming. People are going to be coming to Canada. Expect it, plan for it, create the space. Because, you know, something that has happened, you know what makes us different from the United States, our beautiful neighbors in the South, is that in Canada, the settlers who came here needed our help in order to survive. They would die otherwise. So they became a part of our community. And so our Canadian government was built upon the idea of everyone having a say before a decision was made. And that was an Indigenous influence. And so everyone has a say before we make a decision. That's very important. And the whole idea, this is what I was going to say, of the whole 7 generations and 7 generations coming, right? So, and there was another point I'm trying to make. Please come back to me. Oh God, this. and it's about that. It's about the relation, anyway. Oh my goodness, I lost it. Anyways, I'm just very grateful. I hope that whatever I have said has not made you feel badly, but has fueled a fire within your heart that will make you take those steps outside your comfort zone, that will help you to figure out your place within the solution that we're going to find together, and I believe we will. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Andre Forsythe, Veronica Johnny, and Shumaila Hemani. It means a lot that you're here today.